Hi everybody. This is all really new and a bit intimidating. I'm getting used to recording myself teaching for kids, but trying to give support over a video is a whole new thing, and especially for adults, which is less my confident range. I'm much better with just conversational support, so just warning that this is new for me, and yeah, because you're not contributing. If this is totally unrelatable to you, then feel free to pass it by. But I wanted to offer some sessions of support and give you guys some community feel from us at the Center School. So, as you guys know, I'm the school student counselor. But right now, obviously, I can't be in touch with your kids all the time. So I wanted to give you guys the chance to learn a little bit about yourselves and a little bit about your kids' development in order to help support them in the best way possible. If you have any requests of things you'd like me to talk about, you can send those over to me or send them to Carol, and I'd be happy to do a little research and get back to you on things. Where a lot of my experience and research goes is into trauma specifically, so that's something I'll probably be focusing on in these sessions. And today I want to talk to you guys about specifically the trauma that you're experiencing and how that might be affecting you as a parent. I wanted to address the fact that a lot of the time when we read about or we talk about trauma, we talk about it as a past event. We talk about it as a singular event often. And understanding trauma as something that can be an ongoing experience is a very interesting concept, but also talking about trauma as something when it's happening to us right now is a whole nother thing. So I am certain and believe that you are all great parents and all great people, and you've done a lot of work on your experience with your traumas, big or small, from childhood, adolescence, and your past. But working through current trauma is a whole nother thing. It can look really similar because a lot of your responses that you've learned early on are probably coming up right now. But the experience that you're going through right now as a more self-aware person with a trauma that is worldwide is a totally new thing. And so I wanted to just bring awareness to that we might not know how to approach this. And parts of us that we aren't totally proud of might be coming out. And that's totally a normal thing. And so one thing that I like to practice is acknowledging the parts of me that come out to protect me in times of trauma. So right now, just like a triggering experience might be happening and you might say, oh, I remember this about my character. I remember that I get frustrated easily, or I shut down, or I find coping mechanisms in eating a lot of sugar or drinking or any of these sorts of things that are accessible right now to us that maybe we have worked really hard to come away from are coming back for us. And this prolonged period of a traumatic event will make those harder and harder to fight. So first thing in this video, I just want you to know that you're not alone in that experience, and people everywhere are having that experience right now. But especially that's hard when we're trying to parent. It is not easy to be a parent right now. I believe really heavily that our community is what gets us through hard things. And when we don't have community and we're trying to raise children, that it's not human. It's really not. It's not humane. It's not human. We are pack animals. We need social interaction. And as adults, when our main source of communication is our children, that's a beautiful thing, and it's great that we have time to offer that, but it's also really deeply hard. So I want everyone just to take a minute and reflect on a moment when you really, really appreciated that you were home with your kid over the past couple weeks, that you saw something in them that maybe you had missed over the past while because you hadn't been slowing down to see that. So if everybody can just take a second and think about a moment of growth or development, a moment of creativity, a time you were impressed with their autonomy. And remember that that moment is something significant for your kid as well. And they experienced that too. And then I want you to think of something that you're less proud of. I'll give an example. Again, this is kind of hard to do in a video where it's concrete and given to you as a solid piece, but something that I've been really struggling with is that my anger comes out a lot in trauma. And that anger is something that I like to talk to as a thing that's protected me in a lot of really intense situations. So my anger comes out to tell me that I need to be on a defense. I'm afraid, and I'm being made aware of that fear, and I'm being made aware of a situation that does not feel good to my body. And that anger is coming out in this way. And now, right now, I'm physically safe. I'm physically okay in this moment, but I fear the safety of myself and my child every day when I'm waking up. And I fear being alone, and I have a lot of big fears that are triggering this anger in me. And I'm easily frustrated with my kid. I'm getting mad in a way that I don't like. And so this comes up in all sorts of situations and places and times. And so I just want everyone to take a minute and think of a time that they're a bit ashamed of their trauma response and how that might have come out at their kid. And it can be all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be anger, but think of one of those moments. And I know we all have them. The video application on my phone had trouble with that, so this will be cut in the middle for no reason really, except that my application shut down. So yeah, if you can take a second to just think of that moment, I want you to know that that isn't something to be ashamed of, and building shame around that won't give you the space to address it. Sometimes it's really tempting to hold on to shame and to blame ourselves and to say, well, if I don't look at it and I'm not ashamed of it, I'm never going to grow from it. I'm not going to take that and stop doing it unless I keep shaming myself. But something that we know is that shame is not a productive thing to do to children, and it's not a productive thing to do to ourselves either. So take that moment. Remember that that was something that you learned in a time of need for that. Right now is a time where you're accessing all of what you know to protect you and your family in a time that feels full of anxiety. And whether you're anxious about the actual state of the healthcare system or the world or those things, or whether you're feeling just pent up because you've been inside, because your community is shut down. Those are all things that make us feel this way. This trauma doesn't have to be a big stress because of the virus itself. So even if you're not someone who's really stressing about that piece of it, you might be someone who all of a sudden doesn't have community supports that they access on a regular basis, is all of a sudden supporting children without other adults accessible to them, and you're stuck in your house and outdoor areas. But that's hard. Like, you go to the beach and you go for an hour or two, and maybe you brought snacks so you can sit there, but kids get tired of being outside for that long. You get cold. And so it's actually really hard not to go, okay, let's go to the playground, and then we'll go and we'll get a cookie, and then we'll come back outside and we'll do this. And you're either home or you're out, and those are your two choices. And it's not easy to get used to that. Those are just real adjustments that you're going through. You're going through a lot of adjustments right now. All of us are. We're all completely restructuring our lives, and we don't know how long for. So that takes a lot of mental load and a lot of energy. And I'm just bringing attention to that to make you aware that even if you're going through these things, don't shame yourself because, I'm not even stressed about that. You might not be stressed about the virus itself, but you might be really stressed about all of the changes that are suddenly happening in your life. So there's lots of pieces here, and lots of things to grieve, and lots of things to readjust to. And I want everyone to know that that is hard in and of itself, and we can release ourselves from the guilt that happens when we react in ways that we aren't prepared for. And the last thing that I want to talk about is empathy burnout. So empathy burnout is something we're really familiar with as teachers and doctors and nurses and caregivers of all sorts. That is one of our big challenges is learning how to stay compassionate through empathy exhaustion. So empathy burnout is when on a daily basis you're caring for other people and you're extending yourself to the needs of others to the point where you actually run out of the patience and energy for it entirely, and you can almost dissociate or just completely cut it out. And it's there's lots of writing on that if you want to do your own research. But I want to I'm really experiencing that with my own child, like high empathy burnout, where he was sick for so long, and so there was so much caring for him, so much making sure his taking care of his physical well-being. And then the other day he burnt himself on the stove, and it wasn't really a bad burn. And of course, when the moment happened and everything was going on, I was comforting him, but kind of in the after effects of the big cry and everything, I had a really hard time accessing the compassion for no, you have to wear a Band-Aid on this now. You have to just put aloe vera on your cut. That's just on your burn. That's what's going to have to happen. And finding the time to my child, even if this is not as bad as him having pneumonia or me being exhausted from all of the tantrums I've had to deal with all day, this is still a serious thing for him, and I still need to be able to connect with him before I approach addressing something in his body that I have to do for his safety, and I still have to go through those steps. But that's a really, really hard thing to do when you've been dealing with making sure they're getting all their meals and their snacks to make sure they're not getting low blood sugar, and you're trying to keep them on some sort of a semblance of a schedule so that our mental health is good, and getting them there's so many pieces. And when you get to the point where you're just this is just insignificant and I need you to just get your freaking coat on before we go outside because you're going to be cold, that those pieces are still important, but it's normal that you don't have patience for them, if that makes sense. And all the self-care, take time for yourself, sure, of course, that's all well and good until you have kids that won't go to sleep early enough, or all the things that get in the way of our self-care. But it is really, really super important that you check in with your own mental well-being and take a few minutes just for yourself. Jaya's doing free yoga classes online, and those are awesome. So if you can participate in one of those, if that's your thing, that's great. Or if there's a workout video that you can do, or just something to get 10 minutes for you, that will really help with the empathy burnout. It's all normal, and it all is terrible and difficult for every single one of us. Parenting is really hard right now. Keep laughing at memes on the internet and accessing your friends and family for conversations. If you have to ignore your child while you talk on the phone and they're yanking at you for food, that's okay. I'm not judging you for that. You needed that 10 minutes, that hour and a half. It's okay to need those things. You're a human being too. All right. Thanks for listening. I'll be back next week.